Dr. Loretta with you again as we move on to another topic of importance entitled compassion fatigue. As we explore our roles as marketplace ministry leaders, we can be equipped to identify potential threats to our health, well-being, and sustainability. We're going to explore today the topic of compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue, what is that? Well, as someone who is a chaplain and someone who works with others that directly are impacted by compassion fatigue, I can tell you that this topic is a hot topic today, especially as one faces crisis amongst the care providing community, and that would be doctors, nurses, first responders, fire, police, EMT, and I say clergy, pastors, and potentially marketplace ministers. We run into the potential risk of facing what we call compassion fatigue. And the more that we care for others, the more the memories, the more trauma we experience fills our minds, fills our backpacks, and it becomes a heavy burden on our lives. So let's talk about compassion fatigue. What is compassion fatigue? Well, it is defined as a secondary trauma. Okay, secondary being the first one is the exposure to the actual crises that one experiences. The secondary trauma is the trauma that you develop in having compassion fatigue as a result of too many exposures to trauma. So compassion fatigue is defined as a secondary trauma, the emotional residue or strain of exposure to working with those suffering from the consequences of traumatic events. It differs, however, from burnout, okay, but it can coexist together. The two can coexist. Compassion fatigue, however, can occur due to exposure on one case. It only takes one traumatic case that could tilt you over into the risk of experiencing compassion fatigue, or it can be due to a cumulative level of trauma, as I discussed previously. Compassion fatigue is also known as or referenced as vicarious traumatization. So primary traumatic stress consists of primary stressors inherent in the extreme event, such as what was immediately experienced or witnessed by anybody, especially those things most contributing to a traumatic response. Okay, when we talk about burnout, there's much information out there, and we can be equipped with the differences in the definition between burnout and compassion fatigue. There's a good book out there called When Helping Hurts, and it is by F. Oshberg, MD, who is a leading authority on compassion fatigue. But what we do know is compassion fatigue develops over time. And basically, it is a low-level chronic clouding. It's a clouding of caring and concern for others in your life. Over time, our ability to feel and care for others becomes eroded through overuse of our skills of compassion. So we can talk about some definitions here and how we can discern the differences between compassion fatigue and burnout. And burnout clearly is identified as an enthusiasm, a stagnation, a frustration, or an apathy. And it's different from compassion fatigue. There are some commonalities between burnout and compassion fatigue, and they include emotional exhaustion, reduced sense of personal accomplishment or meaning from our work, mental exhaustion, decreased interactions with others and isolating ourselves, depersonalization, symptoms being disconnected from real causes, and even physical exhaustion. So we also have some information vital in our self-care management course that comes to us from the American Institute of Stress. And as we look at stress factors, okay, and we talk about the symptoms of compassion fatigue, we can see that compassion fatigue can affect us in many different dimensions of our well-being. It can cause sleep disturbances, emotional intensity can increase, cognitive ability then decreases. And then we have some Impaired judgment in our areas of behaviors. We isolate. We can even see depression or PTSD. And we have a spiritual impact too, where we can have a loss of self-worth and also a confusing sometimes identity of our worldview. What we don't want to happen is to see a loss of hope, loss of meaning, anger towards God, or crises of faith. So as you read through your course materials now on compassion fatigue as part of this self-care management course, it would be my prayer that you pause, hit the pause button, hit the stop button, and really, really take a self-assessment and a good look at these symptoms and these indicators as will be rolled out in body, soul, and spirit, and take an assessment authentically of your life, your ministry, your work, and how it impacts you in the area of compassion fatigue. I pray and I trust that our Lord God is with you every step of the way, but you also be wise and smart to implement a self-care plan that could help you today. Decrease all of the risks that might be associated with compassion fatigue. God bless you today and always, and we'll talk more again as we go through our topics on self-care management.